Put down your baby and pick up a bourbon? Well, at least this is what I'm doing over here, Brandon. What about you?
I'm drinking air right now, Jerry. Nothing else.
Well, we were about to record, and I was like, you know what? I think a little bourbon sounds good, so that's what I got in the glass. We'll see how this episode goes. I haven't even taken a sip yet. But today we're talking about something interesting, Brandon. We're talking about leaps. We've made lots of jokes about leaps in the past. We've talked about our kids being in leaps, so we figured let's devote an entire episode to leaps. What are they? What can you expect? And when we're talking about them, what do we mean? So that's what we're going to do today, Brandon. And before we do that, though, we got a dad joke, as always. You want to kick it off with a dad joke today?
Sure. You know, Jerry, of all the inventions in the last 100 years, the dry erase board has to be the most remarkable.
I've used that joke, Brandon, on the
Did you?
show. Yes, I have. So you know why that's great? Because two things. One, because it's a dad joke, but dad jokes are get retold. But two, that is a very dad thing of you to do, is to reuse a dad joke. So therefore, the folks at home, if you have dad jokes bingo, using the same joke twice in the show goes to Brandon Banks. So that was Brandon using the same joke twice. Now I don't know what episode I used it in. That'd be a fun little Easter egg.
I feel like that's probably in the beginning.
I might have to give you a chance to redeem yourself by the end of this, because I don't know. I don't even know if the folks at home deserve that reused dad joke that you just gave them.
I got that off of Reddit like 3 seconds before we press record.
All right, let me hit you with one then, Brandon. I'm gonna give the people at home something to actually laugh at here. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. What has two butts and kills people?
Cigarettes.
An assassin. Come on, Brandon. You're the English major. Get it.
That's pretty good. Yeah. That's pretty good.
Yep.
I'm not mad at that.
That one was pretty clever.
We'll see if I have another one by the end of the episode.
We will. So, for those of you who are first-time listeners, we are Dad Jokes, and Brandon and myself are first-time dads that go through kind of our journey of what's going on with our kids. And like I said, every week we have a new topic. This week is leaps, but we also like to recap what's been going on with us. So, Brandon, what's been going on with Bryce and the Bankses?
It was another solid week for Bryce. He really has been almost a perfect baby. Other than earlier today, we were driving around. We may be in the market for a new home coming up soon. So we were driving around looking at a few houses and a few neighborhoods, and he was great when I went through an open house, but was like throwing a fit in the car, which is a little bit unusual. But other than that, I mean, he's been great. He got introduced to eggs for the first time this weekend.
Eggs?
Yeah. Which is, we've been trying to introduce a few of the allergens to him. He's pretty much through all the main ones. But he seemed to like them, didn't break out. Nothing weird happened, so he was good there. And then he had some fun in a piece of baby gear that I'll mention when we get to that section. But it was a good week.
So how do you guys do that with introducing food, that he might be allergic to? I mean, what's your guys' process for that?
So one, make sure we got, after the first scare, make sure we have some children's,
Benadryl?
Thank you. Children's Benadryl on standby. But it's kind of looking up how much is too much to a degree. Not giving too much of it. But with the eggs, Kelsey made him some eggs, and he had that with some, I believe it was oatmeal with blueberries in it. And she kind of like mixes in like breast milk with the oatmeal and blueberries and Greek yogurt. And I got a funny video of him trying Greek yogurt for the first time. Greek yogurt, for those who don't know, is like pretty sour. I don't like it personally. But he didn't seem to like it either. So,
yeah, it's an acquired taste is what I'll say.
Yeah, he's going to acquire it because he eats it with like pretty much everything now. He's gotten used to it, but it's not my favorite. I feel his pain with some of the faces he makes when he eats it, but we like to give him, and then we've been doing some of the, like, as we are eating, giving him a piece of certain things. So he's had toast, pieces of pizza, like broccoli from meals that I had, stuff like that. Just to kind of, it's more or less chewing on it for texture at this point. One really cool thing, and this might be baby gear, but from the beginning, one thing that like Kelsey did the research on this. We don't like feed him, like we basically put the food on a spoon and then put the spoon in his hand. He has like a little baby spoon, also like a baby cup, like a real cup. And so he'll grab the spoon and put it up to his face. He'll wipe it all around his face, eventually find his mouth. And over the last 2 months, he's gotten actually pretty. He's not like eating like a normal adult, but he understands the process, and it's amazing him with the cup, because it's basically like a 2-ounce cup, and you put water in it, and in the beginning it would just all kind of fall down his mouth, but as we've progressed, he can basically drink out of this cup without spilling a ton, just like it's not a sippy cup or anything like that. It's just a regular, very small cup, but it's pretty cool.
And what is Bryce's exact age as of right now?
He is 7 months and a week.
7 months and a week. When did you guys start
Actually,
giving him...
7 months and 10 days.
There you go. When did you guys start kind of doing more with the food? And then I know water's actually an interesting thing. You're not supposed to give a baby water until a certain age. What age was that you guys started giving water to?
We didn't really start introducing food and the water until right before he turned 6 months. He was like 5.5 months when we started. We pushed it. Our what we wanted was for him to be able to sit up. It was kind of, our doctor gave us the okay at like 4 months basically. But for us, we just wanted him to be able to sit up on his own. Everything we read said it helps with like choking, things like that. And personally, I just was like kind of freaked. I freak out when he like slightly gags on anything or like coughs, stuff like that. So Kelsey has been around kids before, and she's like, he's going to gag on like food when he eats it. It's just normal. I was like, yeah, let's give it a little bit of time. So I was the hold up on that more than anything else. We probably would have done it at least half a month, but maybe even a full month earlier than we did.
Yeah, Peyton's 4.5 months now, and she was given the okay at 4 months to start introducing like more like cereal and oatmeal, not just in like the bottles, but like eating them herself. And she's been doing pretty good with that. It's funny you mentioned the thing with the spoon. We haven't really done that intentionally. She just likes to grab the spoon and do her own thing. So she kind of doesn't. She gets mad when you try to feed her. She wants to feed herself. So most of the time we just kind of let her do that because she gets mad. But one tip for you guys out there that are starting to maybe get close to feeding your baby, or maybe have just started, we've had a bunch of spoons bought for us in our registry. We have probably 1,000 baby spoons. It's crazy, but we've noticed.
No exaggeration.
Yeah, no, at all. Honestly, we probably had like 50 bought for us. It's crazy. They come in packs, but most of them are kind of normal looking spoons. And we found that actually the ones that work better are like the flat ones, because what happens is when she tries to eat out of the normal spoons is like the curve or like the ridge at the bottom holds the oatmeal in it, and she can't get that. But the flat one, she gets everything off of. So that we've been doing that lately, and it's worked better.
That's pretty much the only spoon that we use with Bryce. It's flat on both sides, has a little small hole in the middle of it. Basically, you put the spoon in the oatmeal or whatever he's eating, and both sides have like almost an equal amount on it. He decides which side or both that he's gonna put in his mouth.
Yeah. Well,
most of the time his cheeks get up most of it.
To tease a piece of baby gear that we haven't used yet, but I might bring up in a future episode, they have teething spoons. And that's something that we might look into too. But we have not done that yet. But speaking of teething, Brandon, that's kind of been the theme around here in our household this last week. The last time we talked, I kind of mentioned how Peyton had been a little bit more cranky than normal, because you asked me if she's kind of over the colicky stage, and I said, I think so, but the last few days have been rough. Well, the night after we recorded, she was horrible. She kept doing this thing when she would scream, she'd grab the back of her head, and she kept doing it, and I thought it was just like a weird, like, soothing thing. You know, some people grab their hair or, like, baby stretch out. But then eventually I was like, you know what? I think she's trying to grab her ear. And Maisie's like, yeah, that might be what she's trying to do. So I felt bad because I'm like, she probably has an ear infection. But it was super late by the time we realized this. So she was in a really bad mood the whole entire day, was screaming a lot, did not sleep well. So the next morning, Macy made an appointment. Our pediatrician was great, got us right in. We're like, hey, we think she has an ear infection. I was almost 100% certain, and they're like, nope, her ears look great. She's just teething really bad. And I guess it's normal when babies teeth to kind of grab at their ear and tilt their head and kind of act, because they don't know where the pain's coming from, I guess. So I guess it was good she didn't have an ear infection, but it also was kind of like, well, there's not much you can do with that. So she's been teething really bad. Nights have been rough. The last few days have been a little bit better, but she just is not sleeping as well. She wakes up more frequently, and then she will randomly, you can tell she's just in pain and kind of does what she used to do when she was really colicky when she was younger, but now you can tell it's from the teething thing. So we've bought a lot of different things for teething. One thing to be careful on is there's some of those like Oragel that like people use as adults. Yeah. There's stuff in that they don't want babies to have. Now they make it with. I
just got prescribed that.
There you go. Oragel. Well, there's baby ones where it doesn't have that stuff in there, but I was doing some research and I guess like that stuff doesn't. A lot of people don't find it effective because essentially it just washes off really quick with a baby because they're drooling so much. Yeah. But we got new teething toys. Actually, a piece of baby gear I'll bring up right now that we got. It hasn't been super successful yet, but a lot of people recommended it. They're Raz Baby pacifiers. They look like little raspberries, but they're like pacifiers, and they have like leaves on the end, and babies can kind of like chew on them. It's supposed to help with their gums. They're kind of cool. She hasn't loved them yet, but honestly, when it comes to teething, she hasn't loved much. You try to massage her gums, you try to give her different teething toys. But
can you actually feel anything up there yet?
No, you can't, but you could tell that's what it is, and it's not fun. My sister actually told me that her firstborn went through teething right around 4 months as well, and it was pretty miserable for her too. The issue is they could start teething at 4 months. Well, that's the thing. They can not have their first tooth come in for months and months. So it's just you don't know how long. And then they got a lot of them after that. So we're going through it. She has been a little better the last few nights. It was really bad for a few days. We've been putting her to bed in her crib, which is hit and miss. Some nights she sleeps for a few hours. Some nights she sleeps for 30 minutes. Last night she did pretty well. She slept in her crib for we tried to put her down 3 or 4 times. Kind of was bad, but then she slept with us for about 5-6 hours, which right now is clutch for sure. And then today we had a big news, Brandon. We all, as a family, went to church together for the first time. We've kind of been doing the TV thing while Peyton was young, especially because she's, prone to fits. And she did great. She got a little fussy at the beginning, but nothing too bad. And then she kind of fell asleep in my arms. And, church was about an hour and 40 minutes, and like she was pretty solid for the whole thing. So that was fun for the family to go to church together, and it kind of was good. And the funny thing too was there's probably 3 or 4 babies nearby, similar in age to her, that I saw. It kind of so makes you feel good, like, okay, some of them are fussy, some of them are good, and you just kind of look around and like everyone is like, yeah, we understand, don't worry about it, kind of thing.
Were you secretly waiting for somebody to look at you crazy if she made a noise?
No, I was just, it was funny because
I would be doing.
Like during like worship and there's songs and stuff, she makes noise, then no big deal. But when it gets like really quiet and there, there's prayer or something.
Don't start yelling to the altar call.
Exactly. She starts screaming when it's like everyone bow their head and pray. That's not what you want there. Not that people won't understand, but it went well. I was happy with that, and she's been pretty good today. It's nice out today, Brandon. We went for a walk. And it's funny, she was down for a nap when I started recording, and I heard her get up, and she's been screaming for the last 5-10 minutes. So she's been good all day until right now, apparently, when mom's got to deal with her by herself. So sorry, Macy, when you're listening to this.
Shout out to you, Macy. And that is one thing I forgot to mention. Sleep-wise, this has been the best week of Bryce's life as far as sleep. There's been, I think it's been 3 nights, actually, that we put him to bed at 7:30 or 8, and he pretty much stayed asleep the entire night until Kelsey got up for work, which was, it helped us rest. It's funny, you think you like catch up on sleep during days like that, and I feel like this is the most tired I've been in a while for some reason. But
what are you putting Bryce down in right now? Are you just putting him down in pajamas? Are you putting him in a sleep sack?
So he has his onesie, and then we're putting him in the sleep sack, and then we put the Nanit band around him as well.
How's that been working out?
It's peace of mind. just like the outlet was. It works. It tells us when he's allegedly breathing. You know, I was skeptical about all that stuff. So it is doing what it is supposed to do. I'll put it that way.
There you go. Yeah, we've been putting her down in her Magic Merlin suit most of the time, and I'm trying to see when we should transition to. It's not like she sleeps great anyways to sleep sacks and stuff, and then we could use the Nanit bands as well. But it's tough sometimes. You know, you want to switch away from it, but then it's even worse. So you never really know as a parent. I feel like when to switch them out of things, other than like when they're swaddling. If they can roll over, they say don't swaddle. But after that, it's like kind of
yeah.
Teach their
Bryce
own.
was in his Magic Merlin for the longest time of anything up until this point, and it got to the point where he was growing out of it, and that's when so the decision was almost made for us. But he wasn't. I mean, the kid still isn't rolling over. he absolutely can. It just is not doing it. We made a joke like months ago that he was going to be like crawling before he rolled over, and that's for sure. Like he's doing push-ups now basically, but will not roll over. It's nuts.
Peyton's a good friend because I think she's trying to side with Bryce, and she's like, you know what, I was rolling over all the time, but now since Bryce doesn't want to, I don't want to either because she refuses it now. she refuses to lately. It seems like
he doesn't hate tummy time or anything like that either. Just like
yeah, she's been better with tummy time too.
He'll put his head right down where he's laying at if he's done and just look at you. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
She doesn't seem to have any interest in it lately. It's just kind of funny. It's not even like she's trying and it's not working. She just kind of like is chilling lately with tummy time. So
you know, I will give him a little. He is actually trying. He can't figure out his one arm. I think it's his right arm. If I'm thinking right, but he cannot get past it.
Nice. Well, Brandon, you kind of hinted at having a piece of baby gear you wanted to go over. What's that piece of baby gear?
Oh man, it was almost. It might be my favorite like toy so far, and it's the Jolly Jumper. So we were gifted the Jolly Jumper with like this thing is huge. Some Jolly Jumpers, I think they have them like you hook them up to like your door frame or something like that. This one came with its own stand, which is huge. The thing's taller than me. But basically, it's basically a bungee seat for your kid that lets them like put their feet on the ground and push off so they can jump like on their own, in theory, but it's building like strength. But we put him in that thing and he's just having the time of his life. He started to figure it out. He's kind of rolling around, twisting around, and then started jumping. And it's just fun to watch.
Well, it's funny. The last time we were on the show, Brandon, you mentioned how you absolutely love like the activity center that Bryce has.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have one, but Peyton's been, because she's small. She's at the, 3rd to 5th percentile in weight, and she's like 10th percentile in height. So you were mentioning it, and I'm like, Macy, when are you allowed to use that thing? She's like, I don't know. She's like, I think as long as they can keep their head up is what everything says. I'm like, I don't think she's tall enough. She's like, well, let's just try it. So I got it out. I put her in there, and her feet are like a good 6 inches away from touching the bottom. But the funny part was, Brandon, I put her in there, and she's like hanging, her feet dangling, and she was loving it. She thought it was great. I was cracking up. We put like a blanket underneath just for a couple minutes.
I was about to say, I did that one time with Bryce. I put like a couch pillow underneath it, and he was pushing himself up. He was fine.
Yeah, we did it. We didn't do it for too long just because I didn't know with her feet not touching, But she liked it. She was perfectly happy. It was kind of funny, actually. She was just chilling. The thing was, she was like in it, chilling, and she wasn't even trying to play with the stuff. She was just looking around. Like I don't know. She just seemed to like it. I was playing with the stuff, trying to show her, and she was just happy as a clam. So I'm hoping we get to that soon. But that jumper sounds pretty cool. I mean,
it is. I mean that stand up playset was, from like a parental standpoint, probably the easiest way for me to see Bryce's development and how quickly he was developing. Because the first time we put him in it, I like you said, I had to like show him how everything worked, what to do, and 2 weeks later, he's spinning himself around in the thing, hitting buttons, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's fun.
Well, that's a good segue into today's topic, Brandon, talking about development, because that's really what we're getting into today. And
You
that
think I didn't
is,
do that on purpose, Jerry?
I liked it. It was nice. I think it was a couple weeks ago I tried to do a segue that made no sense at all, but that one was perfect. A nice little toss up for me, and I was able to hit it there.
Little alley-oop.
Yep. But yeah, we're talking about development. We're talking about leaps. We've mentioned leaps lots of times. A lot of you might have heard of leaps before. So what is a leap? A leap is essentially a stage in a baby's life where they are going through major developments. So things are changing drastically for them. And it's usually marked by a certain period of time. That doesn't mean it's exact, like every baby at 4.5 weeks all hit this stage. But based on averages, these are when things start to change. And it talks about developments, and it talks about sensory changes. So babies not only start to pick up new skills, but they also might be changing. So their sleep patterns are changing, their eating habits are changing, and their mood habits are changing. All those things can be affected by a leap, which is why, generally speaking, when me and Brandon talk about leaps, we do so laughingly and kind of negatively, because most leaps are marked by more eating, less sleeping, more crankiness, none of which are good things.
And what's crazy is I feel like for us, you're going through it now, but kind of that 4-month stage is your first really long leap where you're in it for like 5 weeks. So you are in it for almost, it feels like forever.
We actually just got out of it, and then the teething started. So that was super fun.
I don't envy you guys.
But yeah, that's kind of what a leap is. So the leaps basically talk about your baby going through some changes, and it, like I said, it's marked by some of those things I just mentioned. But every single leap is some different skills they will learn. And there's 10 leaps, and you can track them on the Wonder Weeks app, which is an app we've mentioned before, and it will kind of tell you, hey, your baby is in this leap right now. This is how long it should last. Go run and hide. Or, hey, basically, this is the 2 days of the month that your baby's supposed to be happy. And as you listen to them scream, you look at the app and you want to throw it. But the Wonder Weeks app, it is a good app. It does go through what is going on. What's nice is it says, hey, these are some skills they should be learning right now, and you can kind of check them off. Or you can go, hey, why isn't she doing this, or why isn't he doing that? But also, it lets you kind of look ahead sometimes and go, ooh, I'm excited because in the next week or two, she might start doing these things. So that's kind of what leaps are. Brandon, I'll kind of let you talk a little bit more about that and go over maybe the first few leaps.
Yeah, and one thing that is interesting to me is when I looked into Wonder Weeks, and I had the app before we had Bryce, but I didn't really dig into it a ton. And then as I'm setting it up, we're in the hospital, and I'm thinking I'm going to put like his actual birthday on there. But they use the due date to predict the leaps. And the thought process behind that is the development of the brain starts in the womb and not after birth. So that makes the due date most important when calculating the leaps. Basically, the belief is the due date helps predict the leaps, according to Wonder Weeks, within a margin of about 2 weeks on either side. So they are building themselves a buffer. If you start to see your kid, say you download the app, or you're just looking at like a leap chart based on the due date, they do build themselves a bit of a buffer. It's almost like when you are getting here comes one of my bad analogies. You're getting like furniture delivered, and they tell you that it'll come not at 4 o'clock, not between 4 and 5, but between like 8 o'clock a.m. and 4 o'clock p.m. That's how I look at it. But the first, I'll go over the first 5, Jerry, and then you can pick up the back end. But the sensations is considered the first leap. That normally happens around week 5. Then you go into patterns. That's between week 8 and 9. Smooth transitions, it would be week 12. That's one of the shorter ones. The dreaded 4th is the events between weeks 15 and 19. And we'll get more into what each of these mean. And then the 5th leap is relationships. And this is the one that Bryce just came out of. But that's between weeks 23 and 26.
Yeah, and leap 6 is usually between 33.5 and 37.5 weeks. That's categories. Leap 7 they call sequences. That's between 41 to 46 weeks. At 50 to 54 weeks is programs. Leap 9 theatrics and tantrums. Oh boy, that's 59.5 to 61.5 weeks.
Wait, that hasn't happened yet?
Yeah, exactly. And the last leap, leap 10, is systems, 70.5 to 76.5 weeks. So as you'll notice, this is not just the first year of the baby's life. It goes well beyond that. And
they say up to 20 months.
Yep, up to 20 months kind of marks all these different leaps. And these are big stages, big things in your baby's life. And the funny part is sometimes as parents, and I've done this, and Brandon, I know you've done it as well, we can look at a leap and we focus on the negative. We focus on, hey, the baby's crankier, doesn't sleep as well, the bad things. But actually, the leaps are pretty cool because it usually marks a big change in the baby's development and the day-to-day things that they can do and that you can interact and do with your baby as well. So that's kind of fun. And you see them. You actually do. Like, you start reading and you're like, yeah, she started doing that. Or, you know what? I did notice this. That's kind of fun. So, to go more into detail, for example, the first leap is changing sensations. So that happens at about 4.5 to 5.5 weeks. And they basically at this point go from being that newborn where you just hold it and it sleeps and, cries but doesn't do much other than just cry, sleep, and poop, right?
Yeah. And when it's crying, not even real tears in the beginning.
No, correct. Yeah, just screaming, wailing. But this is kind of when they start to notice some things. They start to look around. They start to respond to like voices and to like what is going on around them. Not super far away, but that's kind of fun because that's that first point when you're like, hey, okay, now it's not just, taking care of this tiny little newborn. Now I'm taking care of something with the personality a little bit or something that can interact with me. So that was a fun a leap for sure, that first one, Brandon.
Oh yeah, and they're fascinated by contrast. That's when I mentioned as a newborn they don't cry, or they cry but you don't get tears. This is when you first start seeing those tears, and this is when you start seeing that head get a little bit bigger too, that's the first time I really noticed it around that week 5 mark. So it's interesting that's something that they actually notate. One thing, as you're looking at Wonder Weeks in particular, you'll notice that the quote unquote head gets bigger, like in 8 out of the 10 different leaps. That's one of the signals that you see.
Yeah, and one thing I'll mention too, Brandon, is a cool piece of baby gear. I think I call it baby gear, but the Love Every subscription, and there basically is a box that gets sent to you based on stages, and they kind of go hand in hand with some of these leaps, and they give you different toys based on what your baby is experiencing. So we both had a Love Every subscription bought for us, the first 3 boxes, which I've had 2. I think you've had all 3 come to your house, and you can go beyond that as well, but they kind of give you toys based on what your baby is experiencing. And some of the early ones are, like you mentioned, black and white contrast cards, things like that. So that is a cool toy or a cool subscription if you look into it, that kind of will help you along the leaps and subscriptions. But I'll let you go over leap 2 in more detail, Brandon.
So patterns, that's the one between like the 8th and 9th week, give or take a couple weeks. That's when the baby will start seeing patterns. So they discover their hands for the first time. Let me not say for the first time, but they really start playing with their hands and doing different movements with it. They start to look at faces differently. You'll notice that your baby may it almost feel like they might see you for the first time during this leap. And then they're making more sounds. I remember the first time, and it was during this time frame. Actually, I think it was more like week 7. But Bryce started like really. I feel like I would say something to him, and he kind of would make a sound back to me or respond to what I was saying. So you can expect a lot of that during this leap as well. They're also attracted to like things that are moving very quickly, but you may not notice that it's more of a jerky movement and less smooth movement as they're looking at the things around them.
Yeah, and that will lead into the next leap 3, which is smooth transitions, which happens right about the 3-month mark. And that's when they start to understand what you just mentioned, Brandon, more of a smooth transition. They can start to follow things with their eyes. They can start to perhaps roll over. They can start doing things.
Theory.
Yeah, they can start doing things like shake a rattle, blow raspberries, things like that. I definitely know in this stage that, like, for example, I gave Peyton a rattle, and she did. She shook it, and it was super exciting. So they can start to, figure out how to do some things. This is one of the more mild leaps, in my opinion. The next one, which is the big one that we just got out of events, Brandon, I'll let you go over that one, but that's a big one.
Yeah, and the thing I'll say quickly about Leap 3, that's when I started actually believing in Wonder Weeks. Because I looked ahead, I saw what I was supposed to expect, and I legitimately could tell the difference in Bryce following objects with his face and with his eyes, and actually like smoothly turning his head. So shout out to them for that, because that's when they made a believer out of me. But the dreaded fourth leap, that's between like the 15th and 19 weeks. This is what I will call. They call it the events leap. I call it grumpy time.
The longest one too, I believe, of all the leaps.
Yeah. Until we get like later on, it is. It's the longest one we've been through so far, and it's for the first time they kind of understand like the smooth transitions, but they group them together to form an event. You mentioned Peyton grabbing even like the I forgot, the drumstick or whatever it is for the xylophone, pacifiers, spoons, things like that. This is when you start noticing your baby grabbing things for the first time. From an eyesight perspective, this is mentioned over the next few leaps, but they are almost to the point that they can see like adults in this leap as well, and they're a lot more talkative during this leap. But all on the not so great side, this is when they're the most to this point. Crying the most, cleaning the most, grumpiest, things like that as well.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing about this leap is they need a lot of attention. Like, It seemed like Peyton, it was great because she was learning so many new things. Like, she was listening to my voice more. She was trying to interact with me more, grab things more, play with stuff more. But, like, if you were just trying to chill for even 2 minutes, she was getting mad. They don't like to kind of just sit there. They want to be doing something. They want to be interacted with. And if they're not happy, they'll let you know it kind of in this stage. So luckily we just got out of that. That's the last leap that we have completed to this point. But it is a long one. But again, there is a lot of good with the grumpiness because they can start to have a lot of personality show in this stage. We talked about the temperaments in the last episode. A lot of them show up in leap 4. Leap 5 is relationships. That's between 22 and a half and 26 and a half weeks. Basically, at this point in time, your baby starts to understand more about separation and kind of really create a more than normal bond with their parents or grandparents or people that watch them more frequently. They can also find hidden objects at this point too, which is kind of cool. But this can also be a leap where potentially you have some separation anxiety set in. If the baby is really close to mom or dad and now they're away from mom or dad, they're not happy about it. So we have not entered this leap yet, Brandon. I know you have. Did you guys experience any of that?
Yeah, I got this affectionately labeled in my notes as the leap in which Bryce started loving mom more than he started loving me. Because you can just definitely tell. Bryce reacts when I come into a room, smiles, he probably talks to me more than anyone else. Like, the kid loves me, I have no doubt. But there's something different that's happened in this last little bit with him and his mom. If he hears her voice, he starts like craning his neck to try to find her. If we're in the same room, he's always looking at her, looking to her. If she walks out of a room, he'll let you know that he realized that she walked out of the room and might give you he might fuss a little bit. And you can just tell he knows who his people are to a degree. And not, that's kind of foreshadowing something that happens with the very last leap that we'll talk about. But the relationships between the baby and parents, grandparents, like you mentioned, you can really tell that the bond is starting to come into play. I think we are just starting to hit the separation side of it, because he will make a little bit of noise if he is not like within eyesight of you, or if his mom walks out of the room specifically. It's not bad, but it's more than it ever has been.
Well, I'm not looking forward to that leap because right now, Peyton loves to stare at me and loves to give me some attention. Not that she
I don't
doesn't
know
love
if
giving
that'll
Macy
go
attention
away.
too, but I'm nervous that it's gonna turn more and more to mom. She loves her mom. Don't get me wrong, but she does like to stare at dad. She seems to like to make eye contact with me, even if I'm far away. Or there's a lot of people around. She seems, I don't know if it's the beard, it draws her in, but she seems to find me in a
You might want
crowd.
to prepare yourself, Jerry, because
Yeah,
you
I'm
might
thinking
notice a
so.
couple things coming up.
All right, well, hit us
So
with leap six.
leap six. This is the one that we are getting close to entering, and that's categories. So this is when baby will study, and pretty soon I need to stop saying baby because we're going to start hitting little one stage where they're not quite babies anymore. But they start studying every detail around them and really begin to kind of categorize the world. An example that I saw in my research kind of resonated with me. So you see a spotted cow in a book as an example. You make the moo sound, and your little one will kind of resonate with that and make the connection. What this is saying is basically you can same situation. They understand the correlation, but you see a white dog with black spots walking in the neighborhood and they're making the moo sound at the dog. So they kind of understand that things fit into categories, but they haven't quite figured out perfectly what fits into the actual category. So that's something I'm really looking forward to getting into because you kind of start to really see their brain work in different ways.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. I know when I read to Peyton at first, you'd read and she hears you, but she's not paying attention to the book at all. Lately, she's been paying attention to the book. So some of it, I think, it's just because she wants to grab everything at this
Yeah,
stage. But I'm excited for her to start understanding like different pictures and being excited about what she sees, not only what she hears. So
that'll be amazing.
I was just thinking about that yesterday when I was reading to her. So I'm
Well,
excited for that.
the phase I'm in right now with Bryce is you're reading to him or really if I'm talking to someone across the room, he is watching your mouth. This happens when I'm reading to him now too. But he's watching my mouth more in the book, and I see his mouth trying to form the same shapes that I'm forming, which is it's really just cool because I know he's trying to talk or trying to figure out how to do what I'm doing, which is super dope.
That's really cool. Leap 7 is sequences, 41.5 to 46.5 weeks. Basically, at this point, your baby is grasping the idea of sequences and understanding how a series of basic steps can lead to something happening or being put together. So, like talking on the phone, basic puzzles, dressing, undressing, those are some examples that I read. So, if you had a really basic puzzle, they might understand how that happens. Or, like, if you have a doll, putting clothes on the doll, taking clothes off the doll. They can start to understand what happens in a process. So that is kind of a big deal, and in a big leap, if you will, that leads into another big one, which is leap 8, which is programs. Brandon.
Yeah, and one thing I liked about sequences is from what we're doing right now with him eating, that's what made the most sense. It's almost like hey Bryce, it's time to eat your cereal. Well, he understands that eating his cereal with the spoon means he has to grab the spoon, put the spoon in the bowl, scoop the cereal with the spoon, bring it to his head, put it in his mouth, stuff like that. He can just what we're getting at now is really like seeing the brain develop more than anything else. And like you mentioned, that leads into to programs which are between weeks 51 and 54, excuse me. And Jerry might have a discrepancy with me on the weeks. It looks like he was he was paying better attention than I was with like the half weeks on the Wonder Weeks. I just kind of adjusted ahead on a lot of
They're all half weeks. I mean, and again, like you said, it gives you kind of a little bit of a leeway, but all of the ones technically are listed at half weeks.
yeah. So on the eighth one, which is programs, it's a whole sequence of actions that you can carry out to complete a larger task. The example that resonated with me was washing dishes. So baby understands that putting a dirty plate in the water, moving a brush over it, placing it in the rack, and kind of the water dripping off the rack, that's washing dishes. And I mean, the cool thing about all this stuff to me is that as adults, these are things that like we don't think about. We take it for granted. Like that there is a process to everything, and these things. I mean, technically, Wonder Weeks is categorizing them. But I didn't think about washing dishes as a program, quote unquote. But that is something that your kid and baby has to understand, and they build on top of each other so they can ultimately understand themselves and society, things like that as well. But that's what you'll experience between. What'd you have as the weeks, Jerry? Is it 51 and a half to 54 and a half?
I 50 and a half to 54 and a half. And the big example that I had written down, Brandon, is they understand what putting away toys means.
Hey.
Yeah, that's the program you want them to get. So that's the one I had written down. Leap 9 is the one I might be most scared about since Leap 4, and that is theatrics and tantrums, which is 59 and a half to 61 and a half weeks. The nice thing is it's only 2 weeks, Brandon, but this leap, more social skills are picked up, including humor, engaging other people, role-playing, doing things by themselves, copying human interactions, and they can express fear, learn to negotiate, and bargain, which all can lead to tantrums and complaining. My sister told me a great story the other day. She said having a toddler is having them have to have their yellow bowl to eat breakfast with, only to learn that they don't understand what the color yellow is, and realizing that yellow is not the color they thought it was. So I guess my nephew got his yellow bowl and then was upset because it was not his yellow bowl, although in fact it is the only yellow bowl. But that is definitely toddlers for you. But that's kind of this leap kind of leads into that. Like, you have them being able to start to kind of bargain or tell you what they want or need, and if they don't get it, they will let you know as well.
In an alternate reality, I've always felt like this, and maybe this says more about me than anything else, but I've always wanted to like take a kid from a baby and like explain to them the world, but just completely wrong. Like that blue is like yellow and up is down, and so but like put them in a vacuum. I don't know why I'm admitting this. But put them in a vacuum and like just have them have that like viewpoint, and so that they grow up thinking this, and then send them out to the world at like 18 and just see what happens. I feel like that'd be like a great comedy.
Hey, there is that argument that people will make that everyone sees colors differently, but you're all taught. So if I'm taught blue is blue and you're taught blue is blue, but you see blue as I see red, we're both going to call it the same thing. So it's always interesting to hear that argument. I remember hearing that when I was like in like 5th grade science class, and it blew my mind. I was like, that's crazy. So
essentially said it. My 5th grade science teacher was colorblind.
Oh, so there you go.
Kind of crazy.
The last leap, Brandon, leap 10 is systems, 70 and a half to 76 and a half weeks. What's it about, Brandon?
This is the one that truthfully I don't want to say most worried about, but I started like doing research on this, and it almost made me like emotional. The kind of the way I read it and the way it was explained. So this is when the baby develops, or little one develops, the idea of themselves in a system. So basically together, them with mom and dad form a family. And my family isn't the same as my friend's family. My family isn't the same as my neighbor's family, stuff like that. And they develop like the beginnings of like their conscience, like their sense of self is starting to develop. They start like telling little lies, stuff like that, and it to me it's like the beginnings of them like becoming themselves is the way I look at it. And it and even just thinking about that, I'm looking at my kid as I'm like writing notes on this, and I'm just like,
hey, we got time. We got time, Brandon. Don't age us too much. We still got some of those. I'm only on through Leap 4. I got 5 other ones before I hit 10. So
you're right,
don't age us.
It's coming quick, and
it is. It is. And they talk about like that often kids are similar to how they are when they're adults. But when they say kids, I think kind of around this, and not so much babies, but when they actually start to develop personalities and consciously make decisions for themselves. So that will be a big deal when we get there, but we got a lot of time before then, Brandon. But yeah, those are the 10 leaps. Wonder Weeks app, like we said, if you want to download it and look at them all. It's just good to know what is going on, what you can expect. like I said, the app is nice because you can start to try new things. Maybe there's some toys that you've been avoiding. I did this the other day. We talked about it, Brandon. Peyton has a xylophone, and Macy brought it out, and I'm like, why are you bringing a xylophone out? She ain't going to be able to play that. She started playing the thing. So, again, sometimes you need to not hold back because you'll be surprised what your kid can do, but also you can read these leaps and figure out what are they supposed to be doing, or it might make more sense to why certain toys would be good at this point versus other points. So that's a good reason. And also, I won't lie to you, it's also nice because if your baby's being a psychopath, you can look and go, okay, she's in the middle of a leap. That might be why.
Yeah. Anytime they're doing that, they're in the middle of a leap, according to
Exactly. So, Brandon, are you able to redeem yourself with another dad joke?
I don't think
not?
I came up with another one. I was sitting there quickly trying to scroll through. I'll just have to come with it next week.
I guess you will. It was pretty funny that because you started the line off, and I'm like, I know this joke. He's got to be. Maybe it's a twist on it, and then you came back with it, and I want to say that I used that one. It wasn't at the beginning. It might have been in the middle. So I don't know, but maybe 2 points this week for Jerry for dad jokes. two pointers.
Yours probably would have won anyway. I do think it was funnier. But the problem is, I'm scrolling through Reddit right now, and none of these jokes I can tell on this podcast. we might lose our non-explicit rating.
Yeah, we don't need to do that. So, if anyone has any questions on leaps or wants to do more research, one, there's a lot of stuff out there on it, but also feel free to message us or say anything out there. If you haven't already, like us on Facebook, on Instagram, follow us on TikTok. If you have ideas for the show, let us know. If you're interested in being on the show, also let us know. We're excited for some big topics coming up. And Brandon's laughing over there. I think he probably just read a joke. He can't tell.
I just read one. It was funny. It was to do with Will Smith and that whole situation.
Oh, boy. Well, I used one. I used a Will Smith one last week, and you didn't think it was that funny. So
this one is a little bit more targeted at his wife's hair loss.
Oh, gosh. Well, I don't know where to go from that, Brandon. I like that. Do you have anything to add before we end it here today?
Yeah, but I can't say it, so wrap it up.
I'll wrap it up. So until next time, for Brandon, I'm Jerry, and you've been listening to Dad Jokes.